You bought the domain name Pyrls in 2019. Why the name Pyrls? How did the name Pyrls come about? And right when you press submit on that buying, did you just buy it to buy them, or did you have intentions behind it?
One thing that's unique about Pyrls is virtually every line of code, even in our product, was written by pharmacists. You're scared that when you launch your plan or your idea or your business, that everyone's going to laugh at you, or you're embarrassed, or no one's going to take you seriously. The problem is that no one's going to pay any attention to you because they have their own problems. And so you don't need to be scared about being embarrassed because no one's going to even be paying enough attention to have the pass judgment on you. For any decision you're going to make, ask yourself, how's it going to impact your employees? How's it going to impact you? How's it going to impact your investors? How's it going to impact your customers? Currently, how's it going to impact your future customers? But with the Steve Jobs biography, what really just struck me was the fact that it was two people in a garage that made products that changed the world. And I was just like, that just was like, wow, is there any way that made it feel attainable? The clinical knowledge is what sets you apart from the MBA or the other person in a non-traditional type of role that may classically hold that position.
Today, I'm joined by Derek Borkowski, an innovative force in the pharmacy world. Derek is the founder and CEO of Pyrls, a pharmacy-focused drug information resource designed to make a clinical decision easier for healthcare providers. Derek has been a trailblazer in the pharmacy tech space, combining his clinical knowledge with innovative solutions that are reshaping how pharmacists access and utilize drug information. Derek, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Of course. So let me tell you how this came about, even me reaching out and having you on. So I made a post on LinkedIn and I was speaking about founder pharmacists. And I was like, when I look at pharmacy companies and I look them up, the first thing I do is go quickly to see who the CEO or the founder is. And whenever I see it's not a pharmacist, it kind of breaks my heart when it's like a pharmacy related company. And I made a post about that, basically saying I would like to see more pharmacy founders with pharmacy related companies. And in that post, a lot of people started commenting all these innovators and pharmacists that already are doing these things. And your name was the one actually that came up multiple times and mentioned in the comments. And so I had to reach out to you and then see the amazing work that you're doing and showcase that. And also start this podcast with asking you, what makes you think that your name was the one that was mentioned multiple times from different people from different sectors of pharmacy? It wasn't even just entrepreneurs. It was 2 different people, 3 different people from all different sides of the world. What is it about Pyrls, or what is it about yourself that has made it to the point where you can be recognized amongst your peers?
Totally. Well, appreciate that. And I really do think that in a lot of ways, what you made mention to there, just a pharmacist-led company, and I think in particular one unique, thing about myself is something I was really lucky because of experiences and mentors to engage in early in my pharmacy career was learning some software engineering alongside of my pharmacy knowledge. And so, one thing that's unique about Pyrls is virtually every line of code, even in our product, was written by pharmacists. So myself, I coded the original version of the app as a solution that, I wanted for myself in the pharmacy and when I was training to be a pharmacist. And additionally, I got to give a shout out to one of my team members, David Hicks, who's another pharmacist, a UNC grad. He's also on my team as a software engineer. And for the longest time, virtually every line of code and even design in the product was done by people with PharmDs, I'll call it. And so I think that maybe is something that unique about my story and the story of Pyrls that I'm really proud of.
Was that your intention to always keep it pharmacy, like a foundation, and then expanded later on, or was that just happened because that was your network of people that you had connected with?
Yeah, it really happened because of my network, I'd say, first and foremost, not super intentionally, even though on a related note, as our team has continued to grow and just as a focus of mine has been hiring and collaborating with more people with skilled individuals, one thing I commonly hear people reach out about is, where is the jobs board on Pyrls? And we have posted from time to time different opportunities to work with the company. But by and large, I've found myself always, whenever I'm in need of the next person, or even especially with different skill sets like design or sales or marketing, I can like think of a pharmacist or several pharmacists in my head and in my network that I'm like, that person would be really great for this. And so that's yeah, a lot of our team members are that's how it's continued to come about, is through my own network. And I think, just something that maybe we'll get into in talking about is, I think, I'm super proud of being a pharmacist, but just the PharmD degree is bringing more and more dynamic people with all different types of skill sets and backgrounds. And maybe some of the current moment in pharmacy, some of the challenges and struggles have, I think, forced people with PharmDs, I'll maybe use that term again, to broaden their scope in terms of what skills they want to engage in, whether they wanted to or not originally. They've been forced to some extent, and these people are, excelling. And I think it's something that should be, people who get a pharmacy degree should recognize that it's not a fluke, and actually, your skill sets, your healthcare domain knowledge through your PharmD is what makes you really unique. And bringing that to other domains is an opportunity that you shouldn't be afraid of, and is right in front of you.
I love that you said that. I was going to ask you this question later on, but since you brought it up, I'm going to dive into it right now. So, I made a post the other day yesterday on LinkedIn. And I said something about non-traditional pharmacy roles, and understanding that, it's a big hype around non-traditional pharmacy roles right now in the pharmacy world. A lot of people are pushing it because of the dynamic, whatever it might be, in the community pharmacy setting. And I mentioned how I think it's important for new grads to understand the importance of traditional roles before entertaining the non-traditional roles, because the foundation of understanding and experiencing that is what will make you successful in the non-traditional roles. And I think you would agree with me on that because of your past experience with Walgreens, and you had your past you come from Walgreens, and you work full time at Walgreens. And I'd heard you actually mention in the past how grateful you were for that position, even though it's a community pharmacy, and a lot of pharmacists don't like doing that. Can you explain on how beneficial that role at Walgreens was to what you're doing now? And even if you were, I think at some point you were part-time, even though you parted ways, you were staying on for a little while before you fully invested yourself to Pyrls. Speak on the importance of that traditional role and how important role that plays in you to be successful in a non-traditional setting, like for yourself as a software engineer and with Pyrls.
Yeah, totally. I didn't have a chance to see your post, but that just strikes a massive chord with me. And even most notably, I would say that thread that you shared there was something that was counterintuitive to me early in my career. So I was someone, I grew up around community pharmacy. My mom worked in a community pharmacy. That's where my initial interest in pharmacy was in the first place. And like many people, I had no understanding of all the non-traditional opportunities and careers that you could do with a PharmD degree upon entering school. And my other quick caveat that I want to throw in here is, like, frankly, if I had a clone of myself right now, if I was living two lives simultaneously, that other self would still be going to a community pharmacy to work.
Really?
100%. Yeah. And if I had a third clone, I think I would be trying to be an ambulatory care pharmacist with that third life, even
we're twins. I feel like we're twins. That's exactly, and that's dive more deep into that. Why would you have your clone be in the community setting?
Yeah, I just love the role of the community pharmacist to, serve patients, serve the community. I love the autonomy that you have in community pharmacy as, you're the healthcare professional that everyone behind the counter there is looking to lead the team, lead the guidance. When a patient comes to a pharmacy, you have the responsibility over their health. And so that certainly the whole helping people is something I really like. But what's, I think something that, even in society today is being lost is that one of the most, what do humans need? I feel like fundamentally one of the things humans need to find rewarding is responsibility. And as a community pharmacist, I just always really, enjoyed the challenge of being responsible for my staff, my patients, and having that opportunity. And that's a privilege, by the way, of course. Harkening back to your original question there. So, some of the, with everything I just said, I will say that halfway through my first year of pharmacy school, I became completely enthralled by non-traditional careers. And I would say that I was someone who was making my way through school, spending more time networking, going to conferences than doing studying, in particular because of some interests I had in non-traditional careers like industry, digital health, technology, like I'm doing now. And when I talk to other students and other pharmacists, frankly, but let me focus in on students for a second here, about what advice do you have to get to a non-traditional career? What advice would you give yourself? And the main advice I would give myself as a pharmacy student is I really wish I would have spent so much more time digging deeper clinically while I had the chance on APPEs. If there was like a 3-month residency, I would have signed up for that in a heartbeat. Because just like you said, the clinical knowledge is what sets you apart from the MBA or the other person in a non-traditional type of role that may classically hold that position. One thing I like to joke about, even with my role at Pyrls, is or like how I started Pyrls. So like I like to say, I'm a 5 out of 10 pharmacist, a 5 out of 10 engineer, a 5 out of 10 designer, a 5 out of 10 manager, a 5 out of 10 business mind. But as a result, I was able to create Pyrls because of the unique 5 out of 10 pharmacy knowledge. Whereas if someone was a 10 out of 10 programmer and a 0 out of 10 pharmacist, they could code anything, but they wouldn't know what to code. If someone was a 10 out of 10 pharmacist and a 0 out of 10 engineer, they would know maybe what to code, but they wouldn't know how to make it. And so, and one thing I want to highlight there too is I think deep healthcare knowledge is very hard to attain. And that's something unique that you get the opportunity by engaging in a healthcare professional field to have privy to you. And so again, whatever non-traditional career you want to get in, it's going to be the differentiator that no one else is going to be able to replicate unless they were to go through a professional program. And so when I think about the future of pharmacists, again, I think I've already hopefully made clear that I'm a huge advocate of patient care roles, and that's something I would be doing in my other lives. But I think a potential rebranding of the PharmD degree is not just as, the degree to be a pharmacist, but it's the degree to be a healthcare domain expert in other industries. And it's more unique. The PharmD is more suited for being the healthcare domain expert than even, I would argue, an MD or a DO or a nursing degree or a physician assistant, or a nurse practitioner, because oftentimes clinicians in those careers, as part of their training, they end up becoming sort of specialized or get unique knowledge in exactly the day-to-day practice of what they see, but they don't understand the healthcare access challenges or other components of the healthcare system that are just as important as the clinical knowledge. And PharmDs, I think, are uniquely positioned to understand patient care at the highest level, as well as many other aspects of the healthcare system and how healthcare actually gets delivered to patients that other even clinician professions, I think, don't quite have the opportunity to master or grasp as well. And so bringing all of that to any non-traditional career is, again, why I would advocate that one framing of the PharmD degree is the healthcare domain expert doctorate degree going forward to the future.
Yeah. I think for me, when I say non-traditional, to me, traditional is your inpatient setting, your community settings, your industry. Those are the three. When I was in school, when I went through school, I'm sure around also when you started going to school and you graduated 2018, I believe, from your doctor of pharmacy. I started my 2018, my doctor of pharmacy degree journey. So between us together, I think one thing that was really pushed was those three settings: industry, inpatient, and outpatient settings. And to me, those are the traditional settings. And I think working on advancing the traditional settings is what will help lead pharmacy to advance. Putting non-traditional settings and non-traditional roles and bringing roles out of the blue to new grads, I'm not sure if that's going to be as helpful as trying to teach them how to advance the current roles, if that makes any sense.
I think so. I just one thing I want to highlight there too is I maybe one difference between our generations is you mentioning that you view industry as a traditional type of pharmacy career, and that's something where back in my day it still would be viewed maybe as, or I think I'd actually maybe just argue that it's still a non-traditional career, and I think it might be a really great case study of what we've both been describing about how unique the PharmD degree is, because the types of roles that PharmDs have in industry these days were previously held by non-PharmDs by the majority. Like probably the most popular type of industry career among PharmDs is the medical science liaison, and this was something that was formerly held by PhDs, MDs, PAs, NPs, etc. And again, this is where I think, going back to what I was saying about the PharmD is unique. What makes you uniquely suited to being a better MSL, or again, credit to all the, great, there's all kinds of great MSLs from all backgrounds, but just the understanding of patient care that a PharmD has over a PhD in the MSL role is why that's such a, Goldilocks zone of a perfect fit of a career. And likewise, what you'd bring to regulatory affairs, which might have been held by someone with, a business background, just again, the clinical knowledge that you can bring to those functional areas in industry is why I think we've seen such the explosion, because of the call it, individual role match that really, match made in heaven between the PharmD degree and all of the different functional areas that PharmDs are holding in industry. And so, yeah, to that end, maybe we can, I'll start maybe thinking about it more traditionally as well, but that's great framing.
Yeah. And I think one thing we agree both on, which you already mentioned, is that I think, whenever a student asks me, the undergrad students, like, what should I go to medical school, pharmacy school? I 100% say pharmacy school. I think the opportunities are great, but I think we just cannot get distracted from the advertising of so many non-traditional roles from the traditional roles, because I think they play a huge foundation and helpful foundation for the new grads, as I think we both agree. One thing that your journey in the innovative entrepreneur world started by you reading Steve Jobs' biography, and you read that biography and you got inspired. What was it about Steve Jobs' biography that really caught you, that you were motivated to go on with your innovative entrepreneurial world?
Yeah, well, thanks. I really appreciate your research on that background note, because so I remember reading the Steve Jobs biography during pharmacy school, and I had no exposure to tech, Silicon Valley. Even I think entrepreneurship is native to, or pharmacy has a long history of entrepreneurship in the classical independent pharmacy ownership sense. And in a lot of ways, one thing is I want to call out, as to your point about pharmacist founders. I think one thing for pharmacists to keep in mind when they think about the entrepreneurship is that, hey, this profession has a long history of strong entrepreneurship, and so that should make you feel confident in your decision to maybe be a pharmacist founder of a technology company or some other sort of business. And in a lot of ways, I view myself as an independent pharmacist who, instead of running an independent store, brick and mortar store, I have an internet company. But with the Steve Jobs biography, what really just struck me was the fact that it was two people in a garage that made products that changed the world. And I was just like, that just was like, wow, is there any way that made it feel attainable to myself? This could have been maybe any other origin story as well, but that was the one that I read, that I was inspired by, the two people in a garage who made this. Fast forward all the way to like the iPhone, which completely changed the world. And I looked around and I was like, are people still? I never heard of Silicon Valley, venture capital, tech. All of that was not familiar to me. And I was like, are people still doing this? Is this still happening? And is there any way that my healthcare degree could maybe set me apart or give me some unique insight to whatever I'm working on or whatever I could potentially work on in my garage?
Yeah. Do you think Pyrls is your iPhone, or do you think Pyrls is the beginning steps to you finding your iPhone?
Good question. I think the beginning steps for sure. And I think I think just my mindset is also certainly the viewpoint that, everything I'm striving to do individually and everything my company's striving to do there's kind of an asymptotic relationship with success. And, or should at least always sort of view it that way, to keep, incrementally pushing towards, relatively being better and more impactful.
Yeah. Yeah. When I was doing my research on you, the more I read on you, I was like, if we went to pharmacy school at the same time, we would have been best friends, because one thing like I wasn't very, I wasn't the best clinical learning person in school, and I was always searching on a way to be innovative and creative and try to find a way to put my sauce into like what was happening in school. And one thing that you did that I actually did a lot of was, like learning how to code, teaching yourself websites. So throughout my undergrad years, I like taught myself HTML and how to build websites. And I've been buying domain names since 2005. I've come up with a good name. I just buy it. And I think I've sold and traded domain names for so long. And that was like a cute, like little side hustle, in undergrad for me. And even to this day, I have my GoDaddy is like 6, 7 pages of just domain names. And I love building websites. I think it's such a like a art, and it takes so much time. One little dash is missing, your whole website is not working. So the attention to detail is so important. Talk to me about what I know the story of how you got into wanting to learn how to code, because I believe one of your colleagues at MindMed was like, "Hey, why don't you go learn how to code?" And that's how you started learning how to code. Did you ever think about coding prior to that, or were you just too focused on bringing those amazing ideas to MindMed and giving them the ideas?
Yeah, no, I'd never thought about coding before, but I would say it was because of my background coming from no exposure to coding, like many people. So I grew up, in a rural town in Minnesota, but this extends to many parts of the country and the world where I, never knew anyone who was a software engineer.
Yeah.
The phrase Silicon Valley, that doesn't mean anything to anyone where I'm from or where probably throughout the state of Minnesota. It's like, is that where Google's based? Like, what is that? And we had a computer science class in high school, I think, but that I didn't take. It was an elective that was kind of like, you have to really talk yourself into taking it. And so, but I was always interested in technology, but it never occurred to me that I could learn to code. It was one of those things that it feels like you need to spend a lifetime doing in order. And so, like, since I hadn't spent my life doing it up to pharmacy school, what's the point it's too late to get started. And so that was something that I found to not be true at all. And learning programming skills is just like any other set of skills that many people will learn during their pharmacy training and career. A joke I like to make is, no one bats their eyes at the pharmacist MBA or the pharmacist MPH or the pharmacist JD, even though each of those additional degrees represents domain knowledge that is just as difficult and deep in depth as coding is. But for some reason, coding feels more opaque as a skill set to potentially learn and combine, even when you're at the point in your life when you're maybe going through professional studies for a healthcare degree. So that was my relationship with learning coding prior to being encouraged at MindMeds to learn for myself.
What's amazing about coding is that you could teach it to yourself. And I think that's, we've advanced to that point now with the internet and YouTube and everything. Like, you can really teach yourself how to code. And that's amazing. Because I know when I was in high school, like, I think my code academy is where I think where I started learning how to code online. But
yeah, one other thing I want to add to that too is, and I think why that's surprising to people, especially in healthcare potentially, is because you can't self-teach yourself healthcare. You have to go to a professional program because you need to be exposed to patients and treating patients. And that is only done within the kind of regulatory confines of being in a professional program, getting your credentialing. That's the only way that you ever be able to find yourself in front of a patient and with the proper mentorship and precepting to learn how to do patient care. And so I think to some extent, I was thinking it was the same thing with learning how to be a good engineer, is that you need to there's some structured program that you need to be a part of. But like you've already said, no, websites occur on the internet, and you can do that by opening up your laptop in a web browser, and you are now in the clinic for being able to learn engineering.
Yeah, you don't even need a web browser. You could just start coding in Word and then export that code. It's a language. To me, it's a brand new language. So the same way you know how to speak English, coding is its own language. It's its own world. You bought the domain name Pyrls in 2019. Why the name Pyrls? How did the name Pyrls come about? And right when you press submit on that buying, Did you just buy it to buy it? Like how I told you, I buy domain names all the time, or did you have intentions behind it?
I think I bought Pyrls so of course Pyrls is a pun on the phrase clinical pearls. And for anyone watching or listening, we spell it Pyrls. And well, why did I buy that domain? Well, first off, because it was available, and PEARLS.com was not available. And so if that had been available, that might have been what I went with. And no, I think I did buy like 3 different spellings at the same time, just in case someone else snagged up one of the obscure spellings while I was trying to decide. And I do remember, I was actually recently talking with some pharmacist friends who said that they remember me like writing 3 different versions on a piece of paper and saying, "How would you pronounce this? How would you pronounce this?" Like, and this was like the most common one that people, at least it occurred to them to say it Pyrls and not some other pronunciation that was less close to the phrase Pyrls. And so, and yeah, by the way, yeah, likewise with the domain names, certainly have, I saw that, you see that meme on Twitter, on X, where it's like it's showing you the person trying to decide between which button to press and their head's sweating, and the one button says pay another $12 a year, and the other button says give up on your dreams. And it's like, nope, I'm going to keep hitting the renew for $12 each year on all these domains, just in case. It's my dreams for them.
It's so funny. Every time I get an email from GoDaddy, like your GoDaddy renewal domain renewal is coming through, and I'm actually like, all right, another $12 a year. You never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, precisely.
So let's talk about competition, right? Because I think if you don't have competition in whatever you're doing, and you're not doing whatever you're doing is not worth doing. That's in my opinion. If you don't have competition, that means what you're doing is not worth it. Maybe that's not the right word for it, but I think you get my message of what I'm trying to say.
Competition signifies that there's demand.
Correct. So let's just say we'll just put names out there, and you don't have to say the names. I'll say them. These other platforms like Lexicom and UpToDate, which are probably the most popular ones that are being used by healthcare professionals to this day right now. Would you say Lexi and UpToDate are your competitors? And what's the biggest thing that makes Pyrls different than these platforms? Because for myself, before you answer, I haven't used Pyrls, but I know what it is, and I know what kind of message you your output messages on Pyrls. And I don't think it's the same thing as Lexi. I use Lexi every day. I work in a clinical setting. From my understanding, like I said, I haven't used Pyrls, so I can't fully say. But from the outside looking in, I don't think they're the same thing, or I don't even think that might be your competitor. And you correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, totally. So I think there's a couple different ways to look at competition for a product in a business. And so, like, just to highlight 2, certainly I would say that there's competition between our product and other drug encyclopedias, med-info encyclopedias, from sort of the zero-sum budgeting that exists to an individual or to a health system, for example. So there's that competition, to some extent, of how much money is budgeted at different organizations or for an individual in terms of what they can spend on clinical information resources. But then the other, I think much more about how Netflix, famously says that their biggest competition is sleep, because they are competing for someone's time in the day with among anything else they could be spending their time on. And I think that's true of Pyrls as well. When I think strategically, to some extent, our competition is any other place that a clinician might get information. And so probably the biggest competitor there would be like just Google. That's where most people start with many of their inquiries. Even, obviously, as you and I both know, clinicians in the clinic, a lot of times it's easiest to just Google a quick keyword or two to get your information search started, even than going into a professional encyclopedia. But with that being said, going back to the origin of Pyrls, one thing I like to joke about in sales calls, because I think we're all thinking it anyway, is, does the world need another drug reference? Why the heck why does Pyrls even exist? Like, was anything really wrong with the incumbent products in this space? And I certainly was not thinking deeply about that when I started the business. It was not that I don't feel like I identified a burning market need from the standpoint that the products we have, the 2 you mentioned, are incredible products. Lexi started and built by pharmacists, by the way. And so, as well as many other products in this industry. So shout out to pharmacists. But I was just trying to make what I found when I was I started coding the first version of Pyrls while I was on my APPEs, and the production version of Pyrls while I was working as a community pharmacist. And just, I found personally for me, I needed a better way to get counseling points and guideline recommendations in the context of looking up information about drugs. And so that's where with Pyrls, I was just trying to create something for me, something to solve my own problem. And so kind of the thesis was, well, let's, a lot of the incumbent products started as physical books or physical encyclopedias, or at least they're a descendant of that type of a product. And so the digital interface for those products was sort of, the way that the digital product for existing tools presents itself was its hand was sort of forced by the physical artifacts of physical encyclopedias. And so one thing I was thinking about was, well, if we were to start first digitally native, if we were to start on a digital canvas and try and build the ideal layout for information I need, this in particular, it was for getting quick counseling points and quick guideline recommendations as it related to drugs. I started with the interface. What would the ideal interface be? And then the problem was, okay, how do we curate clinical information to go into this ideal interface? And so that was one of the first sort of differentiators or ways I think about how our product's different and more useful. And one thing I'll mention too is, we have over 50,000 individuals on the Pyrls platform, and virtually every single one of them has free access to an incumbent product because either their school or their employer is paying for it. Yet the individuals who pay for Pyrls Pro are still paying with their own money for Pyrls because of that, what's different about it. But I do think the modern clinician, needs access to multiple different types of tools. So you need Lexi for this, you need Micromix for that, you need UpToDate for this. And so I do think Pyrls fits within the context of, the modern clinician's tool belt, utilizing it in addition to other resources like we mentioned. And so that's where, from a future perspective, one kind of recent feature we added to Pyrls, and it's really part of our product strategy going forward, is turning Pyrls into more of a platform than being a product that you just come to for information that we service you. And so what I mean by that is we recently added a feature called Pyrls Library, where you can actually upload your own documents into Pyrls and access them there. It's sort of like Google Drive inside of Pyrls. And that's because, so with the historical incumbent products in this space, again, you named names, they seem to cover every topic under the sun in a general sense, but they're never going to have your local protocol for your store, or the chart that your co-resident created that everyone uses because it's specific to your patients. And so with Pyrls, we built a product where you can put that inside of Pyrls next to the content that we provide you. So you can use Pyrls as the one place that you can access the professional peer-reviewed content that we publish. And you can also have your own practice resources right there next to them. And so Pyrls is this platform that holds both. We also, to the same end, give you the ability to save links out to things. Like if you want to save a link to an updated article, you can put that right in Pyrls. And so basically you can use Pyrls as your own personal DI center or your team's DI center. And that's this kind of platform to bridge the gap between, you can actually search to Google right from Pyrls. And so this making Pyrls be the app that you can open as your starting point and get anywhere that you need to go, whether it be in our product or outside of our product, is how we're thinking about crafting the future of it. And I think it represents what I was mentioning prior about how the modern clinician, by definition, needs access to all kinds of different resources. So how to make it easier to get wherever you're going, whether you're in Pyrls or not. I hope that someone's going to answer the question.
Yeah, no, for sure. When starting Pyrls, I know you have a wife and you're married. Has it ever been where you and your wife are just sitting on the couch, now, or even at the beginning, and have had talked about those unreachable goals? You know what I'm saying? Just sitting out and you're just thinking about I could see one day us being fill in the blank. I could see us one day reaching blank. If you don't mind, if you ever had those talks, if you don't mind sharing them, if you don't want to share them, that's totally fine. I totally understand. But if you don't mind sharing them, do you have those talks? Have you ever had those thoughts, even with yourself, of that long term, maybe that unreachable goal that you're going to reach one day?
Yeah, totally. No, and I got it. One thing. So my wife's also a pharmacist. She works in patient care, And so it's nice that we've always had that shared background. And I want to, I wouldn't be here without my wife. She, I'm a solo founder in the technical sense, but she's definitely been my co-founder this whole journey, and been incredibly supportive of knowing that she knows that what I know, which is if I would have just never tried to start this business and fast forward me to like age 40, which is older than I was when I started, or I'm not 40 yet, I guess, but fast forward me to that, like pick that age and time. If I wouldn't have had the opportunity to try this, I would be a sad sap who would be unfulfilled in life. So even though it was a huge risk starting the business, and we're still, Pyrls is still a startup that's, working to, gets to, different plateaus of, achievement, call it. So I would say that, what what we're both most focused on is just being able to, a family is really important to us. We also just had our first daughter. And so just getting to the point where, we're, I think Naval Ravikant had a quote recently, like, you're the test of the true test of IQ is whether or not you're living the life you want to, like whether or not you're happy, because like to decide to do things that make you happy. And so again, that's a tongue-in-cheek phrase, and many people don't have, or there's many reasons that make life that not feasible or possible. But for us, being able to have just being able to engage in all the goals we have in life around raising a family, and supporting ourselves and some of those around us is certainly just the kind of the goals that we hope to obtain. One thing for me that I've learned on this journey, I've been building Pyrls for 5 years, and it's, especially the first few years were a massive grind. And I've talked to a lot of founders who even they've been running the business for 5 years, and objectively it's been exploding the whole time, but they've found themselves at year 5 burned out or sick of the problem, just kind of not enjoying the business they're working on, not liking their customers, not thinking it's fun, even though they had a business that, let's say, worked out way better than even Pyrls has been going so far. And for me, again, even today, there's still a lot of things that are a huge grind about the work schedule and the stress and the pressure of running this business. But I truly love to do it every single day. I love the fact that my job is to respond to emails from clinicians who are customers of ours and try and solve and make their problems better. So I would say that's, in a lot of ways, I feel really fortunate that a lot of the boxes have been checked in terms of those conversations my wife and I have had regarding what we want to be doing in life. It's just, how can we ensure it's sustainable?
I know in the previous podcast you had shared your conversation with your wife on, when you decided to go full time with Pyrls, or when to leave at My Meds and Walgreens. When was it the right time when you thought it was okay for you to go full time to Pyrls? And what is your advice to other people starting companies that are, have their pharmacy jobs but have something on the side also? When do you advise them to go full time? Do you think it's better to just pull the Band-Aid and just go for it? Because I firmly believe, throughout school and all the times I've always had, something going on the side of even school or whatever it was. But they always say, if you're not going to go 100%, it's never going to work. Going 80% and for 70%, 60%, it's never going to make it work. So you got to just be fully invested in it. At what point did you know you had to go fully invest into Pyrls to win or for it to work?
Yeah, my advice on that front is that it's never too early to make a plan to go full time, especially like a time bound plan. And so one thing referencing the previous conversation, one thing my wife and I discussed was, okay, cool. If you're going to go full time on this, we were not. I don't even think we were engaged at the time. We were in a very serious relationship. We were living together. It was clear we were going to be engaged and hoped to be married and everything. But kind of the deal was, okay, fine, you can do that, but you have to pay half of all of our bills. You have to find some way. So you have to either using your savings, using money you make from the business, or working additional shifts in a community pharmacy. And so that's one flexibility that pharmacists have, actually, is I remained in the float pool, and I would pick up shifts as I needed them to do my duty to our deal, which was I need to pay half of all of our rent and food and stuff. And so that's something that, by the way, a lot of that flexibility doesn't exist for a lot of other professionals in the tech space. So like I have friends who are software engineers, and they can't really do the same thing because you need to sure, you could freelance part-time, but like that takes work to hunt for the freelancing gigs. And so like as a pharmacist, you have the flexibility to oftentimes work for a company where you can have really flexible hours, maybe not guaranteed. But so I was a role at a community, we already mentioned them. I was at Walgreens. We talked about it. And anyway, I was super lucky to be in a position where I was part-time. And so I was scheduled a few times a month, and then I could pick up more shifts on top of that if they were available. So that was the caveat, is sometimes shifts aren't available to additionally pick up. But so that's what I did. And so the plan we made was, all right, we're going to try this for 6 months. All right. Like at the 6 month mark, you need to, like, we're going to be evaluating what's happening and then decide if we should proceed into the next 6 months. So I'd say it's never, I do really agree with the fact that you should try and put yourself in a position, if you want to start a business like Pyrls, where it's a product, and it's not like it's a consulting business where like you can, maybe by definition, it's designed to be part-time. But if you're looking to start a business that you theoretically want to be full-time at, I do agree with the advice that you should try and go full-time on it. Otherwise, you'll never be able to get enough momentum going to try and, in order to break through and make it sustainable in that way. And so I will say too, at the first 6 month mark, it wasn't obvious that I should continue. Even at the second and third 6 month mark, it wasn't super obvious that it's a good idea to keep continuing. But having that plan really helped de-risk the decision.
So like you said, like the first few months, even the first probably year and couple years, it was a challenge. Obviously, as you would expect, nothing would be, it wouldn't be fun if it wasn't a challenge, right? How are you adjusting your business? How are you adjusting yourself as an individual for the next step? So when you got hit with roadblocks, we'll go into Y Combinator and how you got rejected 4 times. So that's that we're going to go into that story. But before Y Combinator and that Y Combinator struggle, how were you adjusting? Were you having sessions with your wife to talk about things, or was it just you and yourself in a room and rewriting the formula to what your business should be? How were you adjusting yourself when you kept getting those pushbacks and when you kept falling?
Yeah, totally. I maybe I would describe the struggle of the first year and a half as not that I was getting up and falling, but more so just the plane wouldn't take off the ground. It was kind of like like a baby learning to crawl. Is my current analogy, where I just so there was never any like jump and fall. It was kind of just never getting off the ground, which has a problem. Or again, semantics here, right? But so I would say that I was very invigorated by the problem and solution I was working on. And so for me, these conversations and everything was largely with myself and figuring out what the business strategy is and needs to be. And so I'm just, again, I find building a business, starting a business, a really interesting challenge. And it's like a fun puzzle to solve. And so it was just honestly for me, kind of nonstop consumption of startup content, how to build a business content, talking to other founders, getting advice and input. And honestly, to some extent, a continued game of hitting sticks and stones together. And one thing that I will say too is, so when you start a business, there's kind of 2 ways to do it to identify what you're going to build. Like number one is maybe I think the classic thing that most people who aren't entrepreneurs, like I was not, think is that you think to start a business that you need to like build a business plan and you need to like identify an inefficiency in the market, and then you need to like go learn about it and then like attack it. Where the other way to build a business is to like just solve your own problem. And like that's what I was like. It's like if you have a problem, create a solution for your problem, and other people probably also have that problem, so they'll want to buy your solution if it's good. And so for me, Pyrls, I was trying to solve my own problems, and for the first year and a half, even now, I'm the biggest critic of Pyrls. I know everything that's wrong with it. And so like I just knew, it was not. I was always in touch with where the product was at and where it would need to be solving my own problem better. So honestly, the first year and a half was just continuing to work on Pyrls to make it solve my own problems better. And as we added more content, more features, covered more clinical use cases, that was part of what led to the business starting to work. The other part that maybe we can talk about is just the fact that nobody, one of the big fears I think pharmacists especially also have when it comes to starting a business is you're scared that when you launch your plan or your idea or your business that everyone's going to like laugh at you or you're embarrassed or no one's going to take you seriously. The problem is that no one's going to pay any attention to you because they have their own problems. And so like, you don't need to be scared about being embarrassed because no one's going to even be paying enough attention to have the pass judgment on you. And so that was the other part of the first year and a half, was actually just kind of creating enough awareness and finding creative ways to, there's a bit of a phrase in startups, first time founders care about product, second time founders care about distribution. And you know, I got to kind of, maybe I've lived both those lives at some point now of being able to appreciate the latter there. And in the both of those aspects, focusing on and iterating was a lot of what that first initial period entailed.
Do you think when you were in your pharmacy class, you were an outlier? Like I'll tell you this: when I went to pharmacy school, like I didn't really think anyone else thought like me. I came from an undergrad. You know, I was very into music, and then my dad's a businessman. So like I wasn't around more people. I feel like that go to medical, the healthcare fields are very book smart and into the books. Do you think yourself? What category would you put yourself in? The book smart people or the people that more trying to figure things out? And do you think that there was enough of your minded type of person in your class?
I think one of my strengths and one of my weaknesses is maybe I would say I had one foot in the outliers and one foot in the maybe majority type of group. Kind of at all times. There's a like biblical phrase like "Don't be lukewarm." I love being you should be hot. You should be pick one side or the other side. I famously am an advocate of being lukewarm. There's personality tests that you take. Like the big 5 personality characteristics. I don't know if I should be saying this publicly, but I'm 99% agreeable. And that is by the way, that's a terrible trait to have in business for the most part. Agreeable people get paid less. They lose negotiations. But everybody loves them, right? Or like they get along with everybody. And so one of the challenges so that was, I would say, been part of my personality. And one of the challenges going into business then with that was I would read about all the, like, again, we were talking about Steve Jobs, famously a 0% agreeable person. Or you see other, many of the other prominent entrepreneurs that we're all, aware of, are very disagreeable people. And so for me, I was like, I remember having a crisis at one point, an identity crisis. Like, is it not in my DNA to be an entrepreneur? But, the answer is, no, there's always multiple ways to do anything. And so one thing I actually kind of did early too, was like try and understand, knowing myself, what are my true strengths and weaknesses in business and entrepreneurship, given this fact about me. And so I would try and find other agreeable entrepreneurs and learn from them how I can maybe for myself work to excel, knowing that that this is my passion ultimately. And yeah.
Do you have any other entrepreneurs that kind of to this day even you study? I know for myself, like, I don't know if you've heard of names Alex Hormozy or Gary Vaynerchuk or Patrick Bet-David. These people are people that I watch and study and I learn a lot from. Who are some of the names that you to this day like watching to still learn? Because I feel like in the entrepreneur world, you're never going to stop learning. You're always going to have to keep learning. So who are those people for you?
Well, it's funny, again, I hate that it's maybe controversial these days, but Elon Musk has always been one of my biggest inspirations.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
And it's funny actually, or to your question about being in pharmacy school, maybe one outlier thing I did is, so I went to the Duluth campus at the University of Minnesota, where it was kind of a smaller group of us up there. And I would always I wrote this like quote on the whiteboard in our in our commons for our whole campus. I would always put this Elon Musk, or well, actually, I think I only wrote it once or twice, and actually people just let me leave it up there, and everyone knew that Derek was up there. It was this Elon Musk quote that says, "If you need inspiring words, don't do it."
That's so good.
And so that was, he's always been a massive inspiration to me, as well as going back to kind of some of the more agreeable people I mentioned. So Robert Noyce, who is the founder of Intel, is probably one of the most famously agreeable founders. That he famously needed to have one of his executives fire people for him because he was too didn't want to ever, and that's not something I not to get into that, but just like just an example of but just Robert Noyce being a highly agreeable leader, how do you use that as a strength to really bring people together, to negotiate within your team and create mutual understanding and shared vision. And that's something I still am working to be better at. I don't think I'm the best leader of my business, or I have a lot of expectations for myself to keep getting better in that front. But those are a few names that stand out.
You know what? One of the people I mentioned, Patrick with David, he said, not everyone's the best number one. Sometimes you can be the greatest number two, and that's okay. You are obviously the leader of Pyrls. Would you say you're a better number two or a better number one?
I think another strength of mine actually is being able to dynamically shift between leader and follower, or leader and doer. And I would say even on my team, again, I think one of the challenges of that personality trait is potentially not setting clear expectations at all times. And I know that's something I'm always working on, is being really good about, I'm the leader. Everyone's looking to me to set expectations. But I would say that I've found it so far in my career where, to whatever extent I can leverage when a team member is being a leader, okay, I can shift into being the doer or the follower on the project at hand. Although, as giving yourself the anointed number one role as the founder of a business, without having hired like a CEO to take your place or anything like that, which I don't intend to do. It's there's a responsibility you have to your team to be the tone setter.
Let's talk about Y Combinator. Just briefly, tell people what Y Combinator is, so they understand when you answer this question. But you had applied for Y Combinator multiple times. You got rejected, I believe, fourth time, or you got accepted on the fourth time. I might be
fifth time.
That.
So you got it right.
Okay,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you got rejected fourth time, got accepted on the fifth time. Speak on why keep trying. Back year after year, they only accept 2 applications, I believe, per year. I think they only have 2 entries per year. So you tried it year after year after year. Why did you keep trying? And and what is Y Combinator for the people that don't know?
Yeah, so Y Combinator is a startup accelerator, and it's also an investment firm. So they're a program where you take your business idea or your business that you may have already started, and you can apply to be part of their startup accelerator, where they will invest money into your company. And then also you go through a 12-week program where you work closely with peers, other individuals building companies, and some of their expert mentors to really help accelerate your business. And so Y Combinator is, I guess it would be a disservice not to describe it as it is kind of the most prestigious startup accelerator in the world. They take 20,000 applications a batch and accept a few hundred companies each batch. And so actually, going back to your one question about when I decided to get started, that January 2020, like go full time on it. So that was the first time I applied to Y Combinator. It was in the fall of 2019, and I got invited to interview. And so again, they take 20,000 applications, they interview a few thousand companies, and they accept a few hundred. And so when you interview with Y Combinator pre-COVID, you'd actually they would fly you out to Silicon Valley for a 10-minute interview. And so I remember getting on, I got on the plane, flew up to Mountain View, took a picture in front of the sign. I interviewed with the founder of Gmail, as well as a few other people. And they that night, Pyrls was promptly rejected from the program, but just having made it to that step, that gave me actually like some maybe naive conviction that now is the time. Like Y Combinator thought my idea was good enough to interview. So maybe I should go full time on it. So that was a huge influencing factor. And actually, so Y Combinator they also make tons of startup resources available. So actually, one thing that people, when they ask about my experience doing Y Combinator, and just for some more context, so as you mentioned, so that some of the most successful companies in the world have come out of Y Combinator: Airbnb, DoorDash, Uber, or sorry, not Uber, Stripe, Reddit, Dropbox, so many startups. And so anyway, they all, so it's kind of this, oh, wow, Y Combinator. It is a pretty exciting achievement to get into the program. And people will ask me, oh, what was it like? And actually, like the content, it was really cool. My group partner was on the same dorm room as Mark Zuckerberg. They have really incredible mentors you work with, who have really incredible insights to share with you. But the core principles they teach about your startup is actually freely available on their website, and they have startupschool.com is a free, or .org is a free website. You can anyone, and they publish on YouTube. All the content they teach you is actually freely available. It's really the mentorship and the network that's the huge benefit, and of course the investment is the huge benefit that it brings your business. And so I just kept applying because they were the first organization that I learned so many great things about through the free content they make available. And so I was like, well, if I ever do an accelerator, I'd really like to do the Y Combinator program. And so I was like, well, I'm just going to keep working on my business, and I'm just going to keep submitting an application each cycle. And one thing they ask you on the application, if you're resubmitting, is what have you changed? Are you working on the same business that you applied last time? If you say yes, then they say, what have you done differently? Like, what's changed that we should take you now? And every single time, how have you changed your thinking? Every single time on the application, I would fill it out. I would say, nothing. This is the same idea. We just have more customers now. Anyways, that was the story there. And yeah, on the fifth time, and funny enough, the fifth time was about the time that Pyrls maybe didn't needed to survive. It is when it worked out. Let me not to bury the lead. It was still a massive accelerant. So I'm not saying I'm saying we didn't need it from I could have kept working on it sustainably, but it was a massive accelerant to the business, and opportunity I'm forever grateful for to be a part of.
I know in the program, they bring entrepreneurs to give you guys talks, and kind of like a information session, or just an encouragement wisdom session. What was some wisdom that you gained from any of those sessions where the entrepreneurs came and spoke to you, or what is a wisdom that you gained from maybe a personal mentor or entrepreneur that that you talked to?
Yeah, something I still have written. There's a few like notes and print. There's this a phrase in startups or like the productivity space that says like, whatever advice that you need, you've already heard it a lot of times. Like the best advice is age-old advice. You just kind of need to be reminded of it. And so to that end, there's a few notes I always have on my computer that like I remind myself of, oh yeah, that. And actually, it was, so Brian Chesky, the founder of Airbnb, came and spoke to our group, and he had this, and it was it was after COVID. And so he had this really, enthralling journey to share with us about saving the company when COVID happened, which, as you can imagine, is not good for a vacation, in travel. It's not good for a travel company, COVID. And he kind of told us really, the nitty gritty details of the story of how basically him and his co-founders and the Airbnb team adapted to that challenge. And one of his key messages to founders was, in every decision you make, think of how it impacts each of your stakeholders. So he's like, whether that's it's like for any decision you're going to make, ask yourself, how's it going to impact your employees? How is it going to impact you? How is it going to impact your investors? How is it going to impact your customers? Currently, how is it going to impact your future customers? Or list all the stakeholders that any decision you make is going to impact, and just consider that before you make any decision. And so that's something that was still really impactful to me that I think about a lot.
Wow, that was awesome. That's great wisdom for myself and anyone listening that's looking to start anything. Awesome. Two more questions for you. Have you ever thought about your exit of Pyrls? And how that would look like, and how it would look like, or you just don't plan on exiting ever?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Actually, venture capitalists will ask you this question when you pitch them, of course. And so my answer to them, and this is honestly true, is it's funny. Like my grandpa owns a tow truck business. He started a towing and salvage business that my dad and uncles and aunts and grandma all worked for. So I grew up around that business my whole life. My grandpa might, if you offered him $1 billion, he might sell his towing business. My point there is, everyone has a price, right? But so I certainly there's some maybe exit multiple at any given moment that makes sense for, go back to all my stakeholders, myself, my employees, my investors, et cetera. But going back to what I said earlier, I could not be, the thing I'm most grateful for, one of the things I'm grateful for, the health of my family and myself, of course, in the present moment. But the thing I'm next most grateful for is that I love doing this. I love it. I couldn't imagine. You couldn't pay me $500,000 a year to go work at Google Health, or what I'm trying to do is imagine the like coolest health tech job or something. But you couldn't pay me any sum of money to go do that job. Because I'm doing exactly what I love doing right now. And so and I love the challenge of growing as a leader too. So I would love the challenge of needing to keep acquiring the skills to keep being the leader of this company at every progressive step, even all the way to like IPO, if that's ever in the cards. That would be my dream.
Awesome. Two more questions for you. AI is a huge thing right now, and it's obviously taking over a lot of industries. Have you ever thought about how you would implement AI into Pyrls?
We already. So yeah, it's super huge topic. So maybe just and I know you've already talked. I know you have a lot of thoughts on this too. And I frankly, if we could have another whole hour, it would be super fun to dive into this. I would say that I want to frame up. I want to talk, really quick about some thoughts on AI in the context of clinical information, drug information, et cetera. And so, I've like everyone, I've been watching this really closely since even before ChatGPT came out, since the first like models that OpenAI publicly made available that were like kind of impressive. Like I remember, I'll call it a colleague, Tim Ungst. I remember him and I playing around with like asking the first language models that OpenAI made available, like summarize the mechanism of action of Adderall in like, for a 5-year-old. And it was like, Adderall makes the chemicals in the brain happy, like, something like off the walls. And then just being like, oh, okay, this is cute as a party trick. And honestly, most use cases in clinicals in the clinical context are kind of a cute party trick still. A lot of companies, like, it's cool what they can do, but like making it part of like the everyday workflow is just still, there's an uncanny valley that things haven't crossed from a production product perspective. But I think every single person in health, even in healthcare tech startups, using AI internally to help refine what you're working on it's been super powerful for us in coding. It's been super powerful for us in reviewing our content. So one thing I don't want to get confused here for anybody, none of Pyrls content is fully generated by AI. Everything is peer reviewed by and primary authored by humans, but we 100% use AI actually as an additional reviewer of our content. When we write a pharmacotherapy review in Pyrls, we'll drop it into Claude or the latest GPT and say, pretend you are an expert medical reviewer, give feedback or do a peer review of this piece of content, and in particular, highlight any inaccuracies you might see, or more importantly, any omissions that you think should be covered on this topic. And sorry, even more important, the most important part where we find value from it is saying, can you improve the clarity of this document? Pretend that you're a pharmacy student, and what was unclear to you, and how could it be phrased more clearly? And so, by the way, you hit enter on that, and within a few seconds, you get a response that you can take or leave. Like it gives you a really cheap opportunity to get a suggestion to improve what you're doing or not to improve it. And so I think that's obviously, like, alert overload is already an issue in clinical decision support software. And so there's some challenges there from an implementation perspective of like, well, should we have AI like alert us to any like, potential errors or conflicts? And like, I do think that like there is some unique insights that like really well validated generative AI is scoped for. But from a product perspective, how do you not just add to the kind of alert fatigue burden that I'm talking about point of care, clinical decision support solutions here, and which is what Pyrls is primarily utilized. And so there's some challenges there, but yeah, actually, I'm really excited. We're going to be releasing some of our first kind of production AI features in Pyrls very soon, because I think AI is an important component of drug information these days. So just a quick historical analogy, call it, is like, there's actually right next to me, I have the drug information textbook from McGraw-Hill here. And, just it's an academic, it's a textbook that summarizes the academic study of drug information. And at some point they had to add, Google into that. Like Google is a tool that like you should have a informed set of a way of thinking about how to use it as a drug information resource. It's a really great secondary resource. And so generative AI is a resource that needs to also now be kind of contextualized from an information sourcing process. And so like Pyrls being a drug information tool, that's where it feels, it's inevitable that we need to get generative AI tools into Pyrls. And so some of the initial concepts that we have in beta and in pre-release are around, actually, I mentioned our library feature where people can upload their own files. So having AI help categorize your files for you and label and doing semantic and vector-based searching of your files that you upload. And then also things like, generating practice questions, generating flashcards. These are frankly, in a lot of ways, the things that we're doing with AI is things that you can do in ChatGPT yourself, but just, we're doing a wrapper around it where, GPT, a wrapper around it just to make it more usable. So I can tell ChatGPT to make you 10 flashcards, and it gives you text block. Well, you can, in Pyrls, you can tell it to make you 10 flashcards, but then, we're receiving the data in a format that plugs it right into the UI of like an actual flashcard taking program. So again, nothing novel. And the last thing that's interesting is just keeping an eye on like how things are. So how should you build products in AI these days? And I think it's several. What should your strategy be? There's several pieces. I'll give Sam Altman the quote credit here, even though I think it's kind of been taken as a general consensus at this point, which is if you're implementing AI into your product or you're building a product in the AI space, unless you are super well funded or super interested in doing like something really cutting edge, you should be building a feature that gets better when the new models get better. So so it's actually like a flashcard generator is a great example, is a great idea for a tool, because you can just like ChatGPT is never going to have a flashcard maker in its main interface because that's too limited in scope. But like if you have a flashcard generator that's tied to the OpenAI API, and all of a sudden Anthropic puts out a better model, and you can just plug that model into your flashcard generator is now better as each model gets better. But if you are making a product that's frankly is if your product is like a fine-tuned model API. So some people like took the ChatGPT 3 model or the GTP 3 model and spent millions of dollars creating a fine-tuned interface around it, or even like download the open source Llama model. You spend millions of dollars fine-tuning it, and then all of a sudden the next model comes out and it's just better than your fine-tuned old model. It's like, oof, that's tough. And so anyway, those are some of my thoughts on it. I hope that's helpful.
Of course.
And I think the most dangerous thing to have right now is strong convictions that are not loosely held, because we're all learning together for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Man, Derek, I think you're gonna impress yourself. Not only are you gonna impress other people that were looking from the outside, I think you're gonna look back in 10, 15, 20 years, and you're gonna impress yourself. For you to have people you look up to like Steve Jobs and Elon Musk, although those might be like common names that people just throw out there, I think your journey and how you've been able to go from where you were to where you are now, and what you've been able to do and how you've got there it showcases that you will be able to one day be one of those names. So I look forward to seeing your growth and seeing you being an Elon Musk or a Steve Jobs, and seeing you create your iPhone. And I'll remember this interview and bring it back and be like, hey, I knew Derek when he had Pyrls. Okay, it's like when Elon Musk had PayPal. No one knew about Elon Musk when he had PayPal, but everyone knows Elon Musk now with Tesla. So I put you two on that same category, and I can't wait to see your growth. Before you leave, I have one last question that I love to ask everyone on my show. If I was to go back to high school, pharmacy school, talk to your best friend, your favorite teacher, and I was like, hey, who's Derek? What would they say?
I hope they would say that, let's just say that they want to say something positive about Derek, that he's an individual in my class or in our class that is very open-minded in everything, personally and professionally, in interpersonal relationships and in ideating on solutions. He's open-minded. He's someone that is, enjoyable to engage with because of that.
Awesome. Well, I'll leave the last words to you. Again, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with me. I really enjoyed it. I'm sure we'll meet back again, and we'll do a part 2, or hopefully meet in person at some point. But I'll leave the last words for you.
Likewise, and just sending the same energy your way. I really appreciate the support and the opportunity to chat with you today.
For sure. Thank you so much, and thank you for everyone that was tuning in.